All right. Hey, everybody. Pastor Kyle here on the CenterPoint podcast. Today we have Cheston Downs, who's our media director, joining us as a guest. Amanda and I are going to be finding out about God's call upon his life and so much more. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in.
Awesome.
Welcome, Cheston.
Thank you for having me.
And you're the one who made this possible, right? So we wouldn't even be having this podcast had it not been for Cheston putting in the hard work. So anything you love or hate about the setup we have, you can blame it on this one.
Exactly, yes.
No, but it was a collaborative effort, but you
It was.
definitely put a lot of work into making it happen, making the vision come into being. So thank you so much for that. But Amanda and I were talking prior to this. You know, one of the things that we wanted to give the audience a chance at is to learn about who you are. You know, you appear to be a hard worker in the background. So a lot of people, there's a lot of ministry that happens here at the church that is dependent upon your contribution. However, you're not completely visible all the time.
Yeah.
So who is Cheston Downs? Let's just start from the beginning.
All right.
I heard you were born in Canada.
I was not born in Canada.
You might have to explain that joke.
I will. So I was born in Flint, grew up in the church. So that is one thing I always struggled with, was I never really had like the life-changing testimony that you normally hear from people.
Yeah.
I was basically grew up in the church. I grew up in a Baptist church, Grace Emmanuel
I won't hold
Baptist.
that against you.
It's actually crazy how I know you guys talked about it last week about the timeline of everything. The pastor of Grace Emmanuel Baptist Church actually just stepped down kind of the same time as Pastor Bruce did.
Wow.
So it's just like this huge timeline that's like had its moment.
Yeah.
Was very important to people that
Yeah.
is slowly faded away to the present, which is awesome.
Like a huge shifting is going on.
Yes,
In
huge
Flint,
shifting.
yeah.
Yeah. So
What part of Flint did you grow up in? I don't know a lot about the city yet, being new, but I'm sure longtime Flint residents.
So I grew up kind of on the east side
Okay.
of Flint, right? Like seriously, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes away from the church. From this church. And probably a minute away from downtown. So at the time I was really young, so I wasn't really the one walking downtown and all that stuff. So I didn't get to experience that.
Yeah.
But yeah, growing up, it was seriously like my childhood was like from the movies. Like we had a sand lot in our yard
Nice.
to where all the kids in the neighborhood came over to play baseball, kickball, everything.
Sweet. Yeah.
And like we would seriously, like as soon as the street lights came on, we would have to go run inside the house.
Like the bell. Like
the bell.
The dinner bell. Yeah.
So it's like
streetlight.
every day we're outside playing. It was a really fun childhood. And then obviously probably around second grade, the neighborhood got really bad.
Okay.
To where we actually moved to Burton.
Right.
And then second grade, I think.
And then it got really bad because the good part left. Your family.
It left. Yeah. Yeah. So the Marvin, I believe, was working at the church at the time. I think he was in youth group. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got into Royal Rangers.
Okay.
And then started going to school here. Well, before that, I went to school here in
What
kindergarten.
grade? Okay.
And then I left, went to a public school in Flint. Then I went to Atherton, which is a public school in Burton.
Gotcha.
And then I came back my 8th grade year. My 9th grade year, I came back to Faithway Christian Academy.
And what prompted that? Why? And tell me a little bit about public schools in Genesee
general?
County. Yeah.
I get asked that question a lot, especially because I've been in the mix of public and private school.
Yeah.
Personally, if I was a parent, I would definitely have that mix, because you get to see more of what the real world is like. That it's not not everyone's Christian, not everyone's going to have your best interests in mind.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I went to Atherton, I had lots of friends there, and most of my friends were kind of in the bad crowd.
Yeah.
I personally,
Oh.
I was
What
that
were you
kid.
doing? No,
I
okay.
never got into any of it, but
Yeah.
I had the option to,
Gotcha.
but I never did, and that was really good on my part. And when I was in 8th grade, I had to make the decision. I'm like, okay, I'm going into high school.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these kids are way bigger than me, and I will have to definitely fend for myself more. So I was like, I think it's definitely time to make a change to go back to Faithway Christian Academy. So I did. And coming back here, I went from a class of maybe 40 to 60 kids, coming to a class of 12.
Wow.
It was actually much better than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And I love that my parents let me make the decision too. Because it definitely wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the education, or because one of the stigmas is that you don't get a good education going to a private school sometimes. But here you had the teachers that, especially with smaller classes, they were able to be there with you, make sure you get things right. And in the small class sizes too, you knew everybody, and it just made the whole experience better.
Yeah. More like a family.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's crazy because, like, in Florida, it seemed like that the private schools had the better education, like 100%.
Yeah.
Amanda grew up in both. I only
did.
went to public school. I've never been to a private school, so I couldn't speak to that at all. I can't give public school high marks. I wish I could. Yeah. However, I don't have anything to compare it to, other than watching my kids grow up in private school. It was awesome. They had the Step Up program in Florida, where Florida actually, it's almost like school choice to a certain extent.
Really? Okay.
If you're a middle class family, they will fund your scholarship to a private school. So really awesome program, and we were able to benefit from that. So as a result, even though I was on a pastor's income, we were able to have our kids in private school, and then now I happen to be the pastor of a school.
Yeah.
So that was great, because there's no program like that here in Michigan, and it would have been tough, they may have had to go to public school, but it's been a blessing, such a blessing to have them here. And I am watching. I thought public school was bad when I was in it, and it appears, and I'm not trying to be negative, but the type of stuff, that I see kids having to face, just ideologically, in the public schools these days, having to navigate through such strange, questions. Right there in a developmental phase of your life where you don't know your left hand from your right, anyways. I don't envy that. And I grew up in public school environments that were more well known of their violence than like some kind of ideological, mix up, like where I was questioning my sexuality or something. I wasn't in a school that really was. It was more of just like drugs and those were the things you watch out for: drugs and violence and sex in general, and those kinds of things. And nowadays, it's all of that and more.
And more,
And so we see private school here as more of a ministry rather than some kind of something to insulate people from. Like I'd love to, and we had this happening through our Opportunity Scholarship Program, where a lot of the kids are starting to come in that were previously in public schools, and if they have good grades and if they qualify and they have good behavioral history, they can come in.
That's awesome.
And we're seeing them say the same thing you were. Okay, I wasn't sure, but the smaller classroom size makes sense, and it's just been really powerful.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, definitely.
So when did you come to Christ? What was that like?
Like I said, I was basically born in church. Like it was definitely not a question that, hey, I'm not going to Wednesday nights. I'm not going to not going to Sunday morning just because I don't want to. Yeah. And really, I always wanted to.
Really? Yeah. Is there a specific moment where you remember committing your life to Jesus?
Yeah, definitely. I would say my freshman year
of high school.
Of high school.
Oh wow.
It was summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
I love summer camps. I definitely an advocate for summer camps.
Yeah.
I was definitely going to volunteer to go to this year's summer camp,
Yeah.
but obviously it got canceled because
yeah.
of Corona.
COVID. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely summer camp. My youth pastor was amazing there, and he was just it was definitely life changing. It's hard to describe it really.
Yeah. Who was the youth pastor? At that time?
Youth pastor at that time was Doug Slayton.
Okay.
He's down in North Carolina right now, I believe.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're missing the one.
So if he's listening right now, do you know how many people come into the office that I'm at right now and tell me to change the walls that are in there?
Oh my gosh,
I
yeah.
have come to the conclusion, just so he knows and everybody else knows, I think I really like it. So I'm going to keep my office orange.
That's
Orange and
amazing.
brown, right?
Yep.
I think, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So,
But yeah.
anyways.
Yeah, summer camp was just amazing, and just like that time of being in youth, like
Yeah.
especially not having to, because when I first started going to youth, I wasn't a part of anything. I wasn't part of the tech team. I was just there. And then he saw it in me to basically put me in some type of leadership to eventually be in tech.
Yeah.
So he was actually the first one who got me into the whole tech side of ministry.
Yeah.
By just saying, hey, I see you are like really progressing in your faith.
Yeah.
Would you mind helping out, praying for people? And I definitely took that offer and helped out. And then he eventually just like set me down and he was like, okay, now we're going to shift things. And here's this program to like, I think we were using Media Shout at the time, which is like ProPresenter. And he showed me everything and I took off with it. And then like 2 weeks later, they changed the program.
Yeah.
So I had to learn something else.
So now, for those who don't know, the program is basically anything that you see on the screens at church.
Yeah.
That's ran by these programs that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's definitely, it takes a lot of time to understand it and basically work with the flow of the Spirit. It's definitely not like click buttons and you're good to go.
Yeah.
You have to be basically on the same mindset as the worship leader in a way.
I'm
to
so
where-
sorry.
It's
I'm so sorry.
I personally like it because
It's
it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
And you have to learn to expect the unexpected with church tech.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that there's not just an algorithm programmed in the computer up there and it just runs itself?
I wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
Yeah. There's a lot of work. I mean, think of how much would be missing from our worship experience without that aspect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there'd be a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a huge, huge ministry in the church. But even further than that, where we're moving in, and we'll talk about that shortly in terms of our social media outreach and stuff. So, born in Flint, not Canada.
Not Canada.
Why do you have such a love for Canada? Let's take a little deviation.
All right.
Let's talk it, because this is, if you know Cheston Downs, somehow you know that he loves Canada.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who are getting to know you through this podcast, let's go ahead, make your best case for Canada.
Best case. So I probably started going to Canada maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Mostly because of family. My aunt and uncle lived there. And as soon as I went there, I loved the diversity of culture.
Yeah.
Like it's like you walk down the street, there's not one person that speaks the same, looks the same. People there from everywhere. And that's mostly with a highly populated city.
Yeah.
I visited
Like
Toronto,
Toronto.
by the way. Yeah, Toronto.
Yeah.
And I probably went there about maybe 10 times as of now. And
Wow.
yeah. And the
We're going to definitely get a tour.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I am
for sure.
totally down.
Yeah.
The
Can't wait.
yeah,
They
They
need to open.
They
need
do.
Yeah, I need to get our passports too for our
I want to
kids.
see a moose.
you see moose. You don't see much of those in Toronto.
Wouldn't that be funny? A
Yup.
moose just walking. I actually got interviewed by CTV News out of Toronto
Oh really?
when we had a hurricane in Florida, because I ran a kind of a hurricane support network on Facebook that has 500,000 members.
Yeah.
And so when Hurricane Dorian was coming, and it ended up killing a lot of people in the Bahamas, CTV News, one of the biggest stations in Canada, it happened to be the Toronto hub, called us up and asked for an interview. I did 2 interviews with him, one before and one after Hurricane Dorian, and it was interesting. I'll tell you some more stuff.
I'm definitely interested to hear this.
It was kind of funny. But anyways.
So when I was in Canada, I think it was like the second time, I realized that there was a Elevation Church there. And I went there my first time, and I forgot the lady's name, but they have like people outside welcoming you and stuff.
Yeah.
And she came up to me and was like, "Hey, where are you from?" I'm like, "Michigan." And she was like, "Oh, just meet everyone. Just like taking me around the whole building.
That's fun.
And how they do it, they have their main church, but then they have a Monday night service in like the heart of the city, like in like a restaurant's like rec area or whatever you call that.
Oh wow.
So that's the one I went to. And then I met their tech director there, and he was like, "Hey, come out next time and come play with some stuff." So the next time I came, he gave me like all of his information, came and actually did one of their Monday night services with them. So that was really fun.
And how far are we away from that?
So Stephen Furtick himself.
4 hours, yes.
Stop.
Trained by Stephen Furtick himself.
And it's definitely a different experience being, I guess they call it satellite campus.
Yeah.
So basically like the whole service is on their projectors.
Yeah.
They have like in-person worship, but like the sermon and everything.
Yeah, Calvary's doing a lot of that right now.
It's definitely very interesting, and I would love to get like more in depth of like how they do that. How do they time everything with like delays and all that stuff?
Yeah.
That is very interesting. I've wondered how that works as well, and it sounds like it's a very media. There's a lot of media involvement required. I do like that there's in-person worship because that makes a big difference for that. But you can't replace Stephen Furtick on the stage, so you got to broadcast a sermon in from him because he's such a gifted speaker.
He is,
and just a good guy all the way around. Seems to have a good heart, and that's awesome.
Yeah,
I didn't know that part.
Oh, really? I think I told you about it briefly.
I don't know. Probably we talk about so much.
Yeah.
Cheston and I get together, and it's like time just goes away.
That is true.
We become late for everything.
our first meeting was like 3 hours long because we were just talking.
We're just talking. It was great. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Oh, yeah. And then we just go on.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's been, we have to like really, I don't know, just be very firm with ourselves when we meet together. Or like I'll have a meeting with you and I'm like, okay, Cheston, I'm going to meet with Tara right after this. So we have to be done. So, and we have like nothing to talk about most of the time, you know, but so it's good. So Toronto is Canada. What else in Canada? Like what? You have family there, but is there anything else? Or
there's definitely a lot of stuff to do in Canada. There's actually a church here that reminds me of this church.
Yeah.
Called what is it called? Totally forgot.
Is it called CenterPoint?
Oh my god. I can't.
I
can do a couple of jokes.
That's not.
Oh yeah, Church of God.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Okay, so I learned something about you the other day. So you actually were talking about, well, actually it was you and Marvin. So in case anybody doesn't know that you are Marvin's younger brother.
Yes.
So Pastor Marvin, and what's the age gap?
7 years.
Okay, so that's a big age gap.
Yep.
I mean, like by the time he's graduated and you're not even in high school yet. So like that's pretty big age gap.
And it's especially in school too, which was weird. Like most of my friends were people like in the high school.
Yeah.
So it was kind of because when Marvin was in the high school, so I was like good friends with them. And I'm like here in like 4th grade with like people in like their 15, 16 years old being friends with. Yeah.
I find it so fascinating, like the more I hear about like you and Marvin and your family, which you talked about how you have like family in Canada, but then you brought up how you had like family all the way down in Kentucky, and I'm like, what?
Yep.
Yeah. some like I don't know, country folk, like
Yep.
in the backwoods kind of deal.
Yep.
I don't know. It was just so crazy because
Yeah.
I'm like, what is going? Like your family is just, it's just so broad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I love diversity.
Yeah.
That's why I love experiencing different cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've had that just kind of instilled in
Yep.
you
Mhm.
from the very get go.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
your reunions are like a whole bunch of different kinds
Yep.
of people, different different accents.
Definitely.
different-
Definitely, it is.
I can do a Louisiana impression too. Now. That would be funny to see Louisianans and Canadians in the same room.
Oh yeah,
my gosh.
come to a
'Cause
film
they
reunion.
they talk so different. It's
Yeah,
really funny.
they do.
So that's
But they might
awesome.
both understand French a little bit. So that's
Yeah.
kind of interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Do you speak French?
I do not.
Oh.
That's one language I wanted to learn, but
Yeah.
I couldn't even learn Spanish. I just stopped.
Yeah. It seems like a tough language
Oh yeah.
in general, just because
Yeah.
the pronunciation and
Mhm.
all of those silent letters.
Yeah.
You know, that's the part that confuses me
Hmm.
when I look at French a little bit. But
Hmm.
so awesome. So Canada you're not gonna move there though.
No.
Yeah.
It's a little bit too cold for me,
Yeah.
but their summers are nice.
Yeah.
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 It is fun to see that. So Faithway youth group, you come to Jesus. I think it's so interesting to, point out how easy it is to take youth group for granted,
Hmm.
summer camp for granted, even Faithway, which is now CenterPoint Christian Academy.
Yeah.
These are institutions of evangelization, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine yourself being a follower of Jesus without youth group, without summer camp? And so
Yeah.
I think that's just important to think of, even though you say, hey, I grew up in the church.
Hmm.
Those, you could have grown up in the same exact circumstances, but just not had those very simple elements in your life, and you'd be in a totally different place. And
Yeah.
so God, through the ministries of the church, is not only equipping people with a knowledge of God, but also raising up people to lead the church
Hmm.
in the next generation. And so it's cool that we can think right now, some of our students in the academy, some of our students in the youth group might be our media director
Hmm.
10 years from now.
Yeah.
And that's how we have to be
Yeah.
thinking.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
And I think that's worth, pointing out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So did you have any clue that when did you start to pick up on the idea that, I want to be involved with media, more, regularly?
I would say during youth group, honestly, well, in youth group, I was just doing the words and for the screens and everything. And then a position opened upstairs for the actual tech team for
Wow.
Sunday morning. And Pastor Doug was like, hey, there's a position open. I was hoping you would take it. You can talk to John, who was the previous media director. Talk to John, and he'll give you everything you need. So the following Sunday, I went to talk to him. He was like, hey, here you go. This is that. This is that. You get paid this. Here's this. And then that was it.
Wow.
And John was also a really good guy in my life. He basically taught me everything I know and what I do now and how he led too.
Yeah.
And then soon as I was upstairs, there was Mark and Jesse, and it was just us three.
Yeah.
And just to see the progress of everything we did then to all the extra stuff we're doing now,
Yeah.
especially with like Livestream and even the podcast, it's night and day.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
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 So so my understanding is that God gave you the prompting to launch us into those new things. So when did that begin? And starting with Livestream, am I right about that?
Yeah.
And you and Pastor Bruce, who's my predecessor, were kind of the ones that made that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the year. It was a long, long time ago. The tech team discussed it, and I was like, everyone was like, I think we need to go to do Livestream.
Yeah.
I brought it up to some of the other leadership, and they were like, oh, no, people aren't going to come anymore. People aren't going to come if they can watch it on their phones and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm discussing that with them, trying to like, hey, this is basically just bringing the church to them.
That's right.
And it's giving easier access for people who don't even know about church, that wouldn't even think about going to a church.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing what Livestream can do.
Yeah.
And then we live streamed Pastor Ed's last sermon. And we got, I think we got close to like 100 people watching.
Wow.
And that was just with my phone, a little tripod, and just going like that. So
just take what you got.
Yep,
and
take
then
what
make
you
it,
got.
Make it happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I went to Pastor Bruce like the next Monday. I'm like, hey, I live streamed a sermon. This is how many people were watching. And he was like, oh, that's very interesting. And then later down the road, I basically came up with a plan of like, okay, if we're going to live stream, how much is it going to cost? What do we need? And then we went with it, and it's been amazing. We probably reach, after like the live stream, I see like the statistics, and it's like 300 plus people watch the live stream.
It's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, because live streaming, I mean, just the fact of like, I mean, there's so many people who want their relationship with God to go deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And so listening to Pastor Kyle every Sunday is great, but even able to go beyond that, you know, you talked about Furtick or someone else or Billy Graham, or you can just kind of go on and look at anybody's live stream that's going on, or anybody's YouTube or podcast or whatever's going on. And you're able to really hear a lot of different voices of what God is speaking into different people in different seasons in their life. And so, I don't know, it's just, I love technology and I hate technology at the same time, you know, like it's good and it's bad. But looking at the positive side of it all, of how we are, you know, we're just able to tap into so much more knowledge and wisdom from other people when we're able to utilize those sources.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who tell me that they go back and watch the sermon again after attending in person because they want to really absorb. So I've been seeing it also become a discipleship mechanism. So a lot of people look at live stream as only an outreach. It is also a discipleship tool. And, you know, you can encourage people in the church to say, hey, go rewatch that. And there's also a good element where, you know, as pastors, might be something you don't know, but people will come and say, why did you say that during the sermon? And I'll say, I didn't. And, you know, because the Holy Spirit was speaking or whatever it may be. And I'll say, I don't recall saying that at all. And you can go back and look and see. And so there are those elements as well that are advantageous. But it's also good. Like one thing that I've been planning to do is go back. I forgot to do this, but I want to go back to the installation service, and Pastor Bruce spoke a prophecy over me. I wouldn't be able to do that. So I'm going to go back and clip that part out and save it into my files. And that's something you can do with live stream as well, is go back and say, yeah, I remember, you know, when so-and-so was preaching on this. Let me go back and re-listen to that. And there's just so much that it can be used for. I think that one thing that the pandemic killed was the argument of live streaming is going to make people not want to come to church. Because we all found out through COVID-19 that in-person attendance is a whole lot better than making your entire spiritual journey focused around just watching it on your phone. The only people who still watch it live stream are people who still in quarantine, or they're from a different place and they want to see what's going on, or they're previous members who have moved down south or whatever, away from the cold. And see, y'all do that a lot. We have a lot of people who used to be it. Now they can watch us from wherever they are. And I actually have not seen it cause anybody to say, I'm going to stop going to church and just watch it from my bedside. Unless they're ill, on vacation, whatever it may be. And we've had, even your mom, Pam Downs, has been able, through sharing the live stream with people, just her alone, and I don't know how many other instances we've had of this, but she's had 3 people start attending that would have never started attending.
Praise God, that's awesome.
Had they not had a chance to be exposed to our teaching first. Because a lot of people...
I love your mom.
She's amazing.
Dude, your mom's awesome.
For those of you who don't know, Cheston's mom is our nursery, we call it our child care director here at CenterPoint Childcare. And so, you know, she does a great job, but she's also very enthusiastic about what's going on in the ministry of the church. So I agree. Incredible.
But she like just like she could just do nothing, and you just see her, and you're like, oh, like everything's right.
Yeah.
Like she
Yeah.
has that like spirit on her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You I take you as somebody who takes more after your mom than you do your father. I haven't met your father yet, but I see a lot of the same mannerisms in you.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. She must be a pretty mellow person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't met your father yet, but does Marvin take more after him? What do you think?
I think we both have like a mixture of both our mother and father.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom's really mellow, but if something
Yeah.
goes off,
Yeah.
she's going
Watch
with
out.
it.
I know what that's like.
Yeah.
I'm not really mellow
Yeah.
though. I think maybe I'm a watch out kind of person all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we all have that in us though.
Yeah.
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 We have a certain percentage of our parents' mannerisms. I probably embody more of my father's than my mother's, but I still have some of my mother's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're a mixture.
I'm a mixture, but
Yeah.
I think I would say maybe 60-40. I don't know. You
Yeah.
tell me. You're the one watching me. I'm in my own head all the time.
So, anyways, Cheston.
Tell me. Tell me, baby.
No. So, what is something that like your mom's taught you? Like,
Oof.
I mean, you've been raised in the church, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is something that is like that just sticks with you? Like, you constantly hear your mom's voice in your head
Yeah.
all the time.
One thing that always sticks with me is from actually a movie, one of her favorite movies, To Kill a Mockingbird. It's crazy how, like, I hear a lot of people like say, oh, kids of this culture, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
they don't know how it was. But I feel like my parents definitely like instilled like it feels like the last bit of like what they went through and like how they grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like we were watching black and white movies when we were kids. We were watching huge like family movies, everything like that.
Yeah.
It's like To Kill a Mockingbird is like a big movie in our family. We love watching it.
That's cool.
And in that movie, it talks about like you don't know what someone's going through unless you're in their shoes.
Yeah.
So that's something that she always brought to me and Marvin. Like you don't know what they're going through.
Yeah.
So treat everyone like you want to be treated.
There you go.
So
that's a good. Well, that'll preach.
Seriously.
Yeah,
That's good.
Definitely.
I think I would like that to be. If that sounds like something that every parent should say, if my kid can walk away from their childhood with that, then we're good to go. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I just think that's so deep.
Mm-hmm.
I had, Pastor Roger was where we came from in Florida, and gosh, I was talking with him about a teenager because I was working in the youth ministry, and he's like, "Man, have you ever had, like a 13-year-old daughter, or like, do you even know what these parents are going through?" And I'm like, "Oh, wait,
Yeah.
like I
It's a
have
different
no
dynamic.
clue.
Yeah.
Like, I am so ignorant sometimes, thinking that I know what people should be doing, or and then we're kind of like quick to judge in a way, and man, so that lesson was just kind of recently taught to me, where it's like, oh man, I need to kind of remember, okay, I've never had teenagers yet, like I've been one, so I can understand maybe their side, but I can't understand why parents make the decisions they do when I've never been in their shoes, kind of deal. So it's crazy. It's good advice though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Excellent advice.
I agree. Yeah. So, what was the conversation that officially led to like live streaming the services? This was how long ago? Like with actual cameras, not just with your phone and stuff.
I would say maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
So we're still new to it.
Yeah.
I have tons of friends that are in like churches around the area that I seriously call like maybe once a week. So like, hey, how are you guys doing this? How are you guys doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that helps out a lot because especially coming from not having a background in tech at all to like just slowly getting into it.
Yeah.
It's always good to have someone that knows about the equipment, about what you need for the equipment and anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you enjoy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love live streaming. Live streaming is I don't want to say it's my baby, but
it feels like it.
It feels like it because it's
Yeah, you kind of
It's-
help birth it into Faith Tabernacle,
Yeah.
which is now, here we are sitting in a podcast room.
Mhm.
Like we have our own little area. I mean, you
Yeah.
helped birth all of that
Mhm.
into
Yeah.
this building.
Yeah. And I care about live streaming so much because of the amount of people it can reach.
Yeah.
Like seriously, just one button can
Yeah.
reach thousands of people.
Thousands.
Like that's
Crazy.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It
insane.
is
It is
insane.
insane.
Yeah, it redefines evangelism in a way. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, we still need to be evangelistic people in
Yeah.
our daily lives, but I have a feeling that coronavirus simply, if one thing God accomplished through it in the churches was to revamp their evangelism department.
Yeah.
And now I find that maybe when we get into 2021, hopefully, coronavirus will start to fade
Yeah.
away because herd immunity or whatever
Yeah.
else, vaccine or therapeutics, who knows?
Uh-huh.
Whenever it is, there will be a net positive amount of churches that now have an outreach department that did not
Yeah.
prior to coronavirus.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, it's a win
Yeah.
for the
Mhm.
kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
obviously, people died from the coronavirus.
Mhm.
That's not a win. But I'm talking about what is God doing in the church from the standpoint of spiritual dynamics. You're always wanting to know, what is the purpose behind all of this?
Yeah.
Well, some churches were dying and they needed to be brought back to life. And
Exactly.
the way God did
Yeah.
that is by helping them to break out, the stubbornness of one generation going into the next. It's going to be for us the same stubbornness that we will critique about our generation. They wouldn't let us do live stream because they thought no one would come to church again.
Mhm.
There's going to be something down the road where the young folks want to say, well, we need to do evangelism this way. And we're like, we want to stick to our,
Yeah.
so we got to
Yeah.
be careful of that as well. But I
Mhm.
think God used this to say, you know what? To even have a church at all anymore, you're going to have to figure out how to update your stuff
Yeah.
and operate. And I've seen, it's been a blessing for me because even my mentor, Pastor Eli Hendricks, did not have an active live streaming service prior to this. And for multiple reasons, they had moved locations and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
But now, if I want to go watch him preach, which I enjoy watching him preach, it's a click of the button.
Yeah.
And that's been a blessing for me. But
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
just to see what's going on. I can see what's going on at that church, which I used to be a youth pastor at. I can see what's going on at Freedom Church. I can see what's going on
Uh-huh.
here, no matter where I'm at. And it keeps me in touch
Yeah.
with these other people of God that I've been connected with. And so that was birthed. I've seen it happen. Derek West, a friend of mine and Amanda's, who is very archaeologically informed.
Uh-huh.
He has a degree and all this kind of
Oh, wow.
stuff. Went and dug as part of his dissertation in Israel.
That's
So
really
he's
cool.
he's come to Israel with us several times, and he's
Uh-huh.
a very smart man. However, he didn't have a live stream. So everybody who was in attendance, personal attendance to his church, could hear what he was teaching. But if
Mhm.
I wanted to go and hear it, it wasn't readily accessible. I think he
Yeah.
may have had audio clips
Yeah.
somewhere, but now, boom, I just click on YouTube if I want to go
Yep.
here, and so it's just been cool to see even personal acquaintances of mine who are good people
Mhm.
and literally full of knowledge and wisdom. Now God, through this pandemic,
Yeah.
has said, I want to take your wisdom and I want to make it available to a much larger audience.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's a big thing that
Uh-huh.
God's doing in churches.
Yeah,
So-
and especially during the the pandemic, it was honestly, I don't want to say it was a fun time, but it was interesting for us.
right.
Yeah.
Um,
You're probably more busy during that time
oh
too,
yeah,
right?
I was
Oh, yeah.
so
because
so
you're
busy.
the only one that's out there like putting out the content
Yeah.
and
And you're
know,
like, yes, now everybody knows that I was right.
No,
And my
it-
job is meaningful.
it was
Yeah.
it was honestly probably the busiest the tech team has ever been.
Yeah.
yeah.
And like it's so weird to like kind of reminisce about that 1 week
Yeah.
Yeah.
of like before we went in lockdown.
Yeah.
Like we had like short meetings of like, okay, if we lock down, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna do this? And luckily, we're like really seasoned in live stream right now, so it wasn't too
Yeah.
much of a struggle for us.
Yeah, yeah.
So like we like basically tore everything down for our in-person services and moved our cameras and everything we needed to on stage so we get like
Yeah.
more of a personal experience.
Yeah.
And we did that for 3 months, maybe something.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun. It was like I would edit. We had like scheduled film
your
them
video making
Yeah.
like the whole time.
The whole time.
Yeah.
And I
Crazy.
can understand how like that could be a struggle for some people.
Yeah.
Like not having an audience or anything like that. I think like our first week we brought in a few people for an audience,
Yeah.
which now would have been terrible. Like a few weeks they would have been like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some of my friends do that. We have a friend who runs a Portuguese speaking church. I do, at least. You may know this guy. He went to Bible college with us, to our Bible college that we were leading. Anyways, they actually have their team on stage with them.
Oh,
like,
awesome.
They have like a couch set up and, and whoever's got a word gets up and preaches, but the others are there. So it's not as like, just you're preaching out a wall or something.
Yeah, COVID has really forced people who were against technology, who were against like Facebook and YouTube and all of that. COVID really forced people. Like, I feel like the enemy's like, hey, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to disrupt this, right? And I'm going to like start taking people out. Then the churches are going to freak out because nobody's there.
Yeah.
And then God's like, hold up. And he kind of turns it all around because there are a lot of people who were like anti-technology.
Yeah.
And then you would start seeing them like pop up on your Facebook going live and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
It's your first time, but you're going to get the hang of it, you know? Like,
You can know it's their first time when they start like this and then they turn over because then you have a sideways picture the whole time. It's like, he'll get the hang of it.
Yeah. And the crazy thing for us is we got the church bought a new Mac computer off of someone that went to the church here.
Yeah.
Like maybe a month before we had to go on lockdown.
Praise
And
God.
we were planning on using it for audio, so like it'll be easier for recording stuff. And we haven't set it up yet. And then we went in lockdown. I was like, okay, how am I gonna edit everything? I have a MacBook Air, but it can't handle that.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, we seriously just bought this.
like God provided.
This iMac, and I was able to take it home, and instead of being here all day editing, I was able to take it home, edit.
You're able to stay quarantined.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it was definitely a huge stretching moment for churches, really. During the time, I probably had 5 churches contact me about live streaming.
So you're seeing the same kind of stuff.
So like how to live stream, different options, cheapest way to most expensive way.
Yeah.
So it was really, it stretched us, and I know definitely like church leaders were like, okay, we definitely need to trust God in this time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine that I asked, literally like 12 or it was probably 10 or 12 years ago, that I said, hey, why don't you do 5-minute video devotionals? Like, that'd be so cool. Like, I'm a visual learner, and they basically said, yeah, that's an interesting idea, but And then here we are, 10 years later, and that person's making video devotionals.
Awesome. Wow.
And it's like,
wow.
It's like, okay, it finally, it was interesting because there are so many people. I was surprised at how many churches did not have a live stream going on. Now I can see all kinds of friends, because when Amanda and I were taking people to Israel, it was normally a group of 30 to 40 pastors. So you get back and you're friends with all of them on Facebook. And some of them had live streams, some of them didn't. So when we go to Israel, what we do is we have each person, normally, you probably have almost all the pastors there, they give a little teaching at one of the sites. And so some of them, you hear them teach and you're like, oh man, that's great. And now they're all live streaming. So it enriches me to be able to go and hear different voices of the kingdom, like Amanda was saying, speaking into our life. And I think that as a result, more people are going to come to know Jesus.
Definitely.
As a result of, what the enemy meant for evil is turning for good.
That's right.
Exactly.
Churches who were losing their fire for evangelism, they had to get it back. And so praise God.
Yep.
And so tell me more about what you think God is like. What is the future of media? How for churches like?
Yeah, I think most of it is basically going into the time from Sunday to Sunday.
Yeah.
Like the days in between each
Yeah.
Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, okay, after service, I'm just going to go home and
Yeah,
I
it's
think
like a
of,
silent church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the point where media needs to go, is to seize that amount of time that's
In between the Sundays.
in between the Sunday.
Yeah, so they should start a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like
we could do more video devotionals,
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
yeah, more videos, more content, more Bible studies.
Yeah,
I know some churches aren't fully open yet, but even having
an online Bible study.
online Bible study,
Yeah.
Zoom calls,
Yeah.
stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
definitely will help. And I think it's definitely hard to predict where church tech is going to go. It's seriously the
crazy.
hardest
That
thing to
unknowing
do.
moment where
Yeah.
you're like, God, like, help us.
It
Yeah.
is hard because
Yeah.
then you have to predict what technology devices we're going to be using.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, we know whatever it may be, it's going to be virtual outreach that's
Yeah.
taking place. And one of the things that I was having a conversation with our board as we were getting ready to, invest into producing a podcast and updating our equipment in the sanctuary,
Yeah.
Was how right now the virtual online experience is ultimately the billboard of the church.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the sign out on Center Road any longer. People are searching online,
Mm-hmm.
and most people are going to try the live stream before they try the in-person.
Yeah.
And I actually believe that we've reached as a church people on the live stream that we've never met before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a result, when this cloud of coronavirus lifts off of our nation,
Mm-hmm.
and people are back into, hey, I haven't been able to go to church in forever. You
Yeah.
know, I think people are starting to realize the value of social interaction.
Yeah.
And we're going to have those who connected with us through live stream.
Yeah.
And we already have, but we're
Uh-huh.
going to see it really, really increase. Those churches that have kind of gathered an online audience, that's not necessarily to keep them as primarily an online audience. That's
Right.
because those are the ones who are going to end up in person.
Uh-huh.
Those are the ones who are going to be calling, saying, "Hey, I want to do pre-marriage counseling, or
Yeah. Need prayer or
I
anything
need
like
prayer
that. Yeah.
or whatever it may." And we've had that, but it's going to get even. It's just going to incrementally increase over time.
Yeah.
And so I see it as for churches. I don't think they should see it as necessarily. Let's categorize all these people. We have this online church way over here, then we have this in-person church way over here.
Uh-huh.
No, online church is a step into the door.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then from there, we get to have them in person because we understand personal interaction is what human beings are wired for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where discipleship happens. That's where all of the good things begin to happen. But at the same time, we have that supplementary media department
Uh-huh.
where, as discipleship's happening in person, like what I was saying, you can go home and rewatch the
Yeah.
Bible study that you attended, or rewatch the Wednesday night fire prophecy that
Yeah.
was spoken over you.
Mhm.
There's so many things that it provides a benefit for.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
So, what else do we want to discuss? Are we? Is that?
I could
conclude?
ask a lot more questions.
going.
Depends on where you want to go.
Keep going, baby.
No, I think, it'd be interesting to know, like, Chesson, here you are. We kind of know what you do.
Uh-huh.
We kind of know who you are. But, like, where's God taking you?
Yeah.
Like, I know you're going to college.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing that during the week. You work here during the week. But there's a lot that I think maybe the family of our church, I think sometimes because we get so busy that people just kind of stop asking,
Yeah.
hey, what's going on in your life, kind
Uh-huh.
of like right now. And so I don't know what's going on in your life and where's God bringing you next? Like, what's the future of Cheston?
Yeah. Well, still undetermined.
TBA.
Yeah. I seriously will go wherever God tells me to.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm obviously going to school for business marketing.
Yeah.
I'm here, helping out with the tech, and it's seriously really fun. Like it's so much fun just to lean on God to like.
He's just saying that because you're here. Like,
Yeah. Here, I'll plug my ears. Now tell us what you think.
I mean, it's seriously so fun, especially with the transition and everything that went on.
Yeah.
And how long the transition went and how easy everything turned out to be.
Yeah.
It's just a sign of like, okay, just go with the flow.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to worry about tomorrow. You don't have to worry about, okay, I need to have this many classes to get done with college, which I want to get done with college so much. But it's allowing me to do my job here, and I love it. So
that's amazing. That's awesome.
So you see yourself doing media ministry?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Whether it be a side gig or a full time, whatever it may be.
Yeah, definitely.
You have a heart for it. You have a calling for it. You have an anointing for it.
Yeah.
Obviously, loving what you do is a sign that God wired you for it.
Yeah.
And that's powerful because that in and of itself is worth more than anything else in the world. You can see all these multi-billionaires who do their thing, and listen, when we lived in Vero Beach, there was this thing called John's Island. Lots of billionaires living on it. Divorce rate through the roof. Drugs, prostitution, all kinds of rampant on that island of billionaires because money doesn't fulfill. Social status doesn't fulfill. Finding what you're made for is what it's all about. And I love how that can be either in the foreground or the background. You can have joy. Some folks, I've met folks, just throughout the years that feel like being on stage with a microphone is where the fun's at. It's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I bet.
It's nerve-wracking because those who teach the word of God will be held to a higher standard. It's not a game. It's not something like, lights, camera, action. No. You've been entrusted with the very oracles of God, and you better be careful because you're standing before him for it. So there is value to that.
Yeah.
And if you're made and wired for that, you're gonna feel that you're where you're supposed to be. But I think it's important for those who are maybe tuning in today, like, don't be deceived by, the lights, camera, action aspect of churches.
Yeah.
You just find out what you're made for and do that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's definitely what I feel like church tech is about too. Yeah. It's not about the lights, not about the cameras, not about anything like that. For church tech, it's mostly about enhancing worship. And that's what the whole aspect of that I love.
Yeah.
It's enhancing worship, enhancing the experience. Yeah, making it as close to the experience as in heaven. Yeah, and
that's a good vision.
Yeah, definitely a good vision, and that's always something to strive for, even not in church tech. Yeah, and that's like one of my favorite Bible verses is 1 Corinthians. I try to memorize it. 1 Corinthians 16, 13 through 14. Be on guard. Stand firm in faith, be courageous, be strong, and do everything in love.
There you go.
And by doing everything in love makes it like heaven.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff, Justin. Yeah. So I think that's a powerful thing. We could talk all day about.
Oh yeah,
like
all day.
This
idea. I'm telling you, I get caught into that with Justin all the time.
Finding your vein.
Yeah.
Don't human philosophy is about getting into that place of prestige or seeking money or seeking this and that. No, realize you're wired for something. As a matter of fact, when it says in Scripture, be renewed by transformed by the renewing of your mind, testing and approving of what God's will is. Then he says, don't think too highly of yourself, but think with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith you've been given. For we are all part of a body. Yeah. And the body has different members. And it's saying, when he says, the antidote to pride is actually finding your place in the body and recognizing you're just a piece of the picture. Yeah. It doesn't diminish who you are. It's not thinking too lowly of yourself. Yeah. It's thinking properly of yourself. Yeah. That you're a piece of the pie. Yeah. And you've got to function within your category.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think maybe one of the big frustrations for Christians is them being misplaced or out of place
Mm-hmm.
and seeking after something they were never called to, and rather than just finding out the way that they're wired and serving right there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's where the power of God is at. And
Yeah.
I can say without any shadow of a doubt that your ability to discover that place actually enhanced the ministry of the church throughout the pandemic. Made a big difference. Somebody's got to say it. I know you're not asking for credit, but somebody's got to be able to point it out that Cheston, this person that appears to be in the background, ended up probably being used more by God than any other person in the church. And I might be exaggerating. I don't know. I wasn't here. During the pandemic, that your position became almost more critical than any other position. And that's awesome. That couldn't have happened if you had not just said, you know what, I feel called to that. I just want to do that.
Yeah.
You didn't know what was going to, no one knew
No one knew.
Pandemic was coming. And
No one knew.
Media ministry was going to become the most important thing. But that's the story of God. And that's something people need to hear. Yeah. Just do what God's calling you to do. And then watch how he'll bless it.
Yeah.
He'll surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the pathway to his purpose.
Yeah. I also want to encourage anybody who's listening in to our conversation right now is that I kind of have these flashbacks of growing up and always being a part of really always having this desire for worship. I always had it within me. I would always, see the worship team on Sunday mornings or in youth group or something, and I'd be like, oh man, it's not that I wanted to be there to be heard. It was that I had this I don't know, this pulling, this tugging that was always happening, right? And I always was let down because I either wasn't good enough or wasn't talented enough or, didn't play an instrument, or I still don't really play an instrument. I can make it a little bit, but, I was always kind of put on the back burner because somebody else was always better than I was. And you know what? To this day, someone's always going to be better than I am. But having these flashbacks, I just keep thinking, all right, God, you put that in me of leading worship at such a young age. I mean, my household was all about music and dancing, and we didn't go on Disney Channel with all of that. We just, God put that in us from a really young age. And, man, it took a long time for God to fulfill what he was going to do. And for you, that happened at an early age where God put you into a position, and then he just kind of grew that for you. And I just want to encourage anybody who's listening right now who may feel like, all right, Cheston, well, I'm glad that worked for you, but I have these desires that God's given me, and no doors are opening. And I just want to encourage that person, you just need to hold on. Yeah. Hold on to what God's given you. Hold tight to it and continue to serve wherever you're at in whatever door is open, and eventually God will show you, because I think there's some growing that needs to happen, some training, whatever it may be, leading in any area, any department, whether it's tech or pastoring or worship, whatever that may be. We are held to a higher accountability. I mean, everything we put out, everything we speak, everything we tell someone, we are accountable to God for everything that we say. And that scares me to death, right? I'm like, oh, Lord, please forgive me before anything's ever happened. I just know myself. And so I just encourage, someone who's listening to that is stand in that. Stand in the desire that he's given you, because he'll fulfill it.
And we have to be duly equipped for what God has planned us, and he equips us by the power of the Holy Spirit. So I think a lot of people come to know Jesus, they get their mind renewed, they recognize that he has a purpose, they want to serve, and maybe they've tried serving, it didn't work out, or whatever it may be. And I think one of the things we miss out on before going into that place of serving the Lord is that we've got to be equipped by the Holy Spirit for it. You're talking about how you didn't really have any background in media or whatever it may be, but the Holy Spirit has equipped you for the job that you've been doing. And that's an encouraging thing, because it takes away the excuse of, well, I don't know if I could do so good at that. Well,
Mhm.
if you're called to it, He'll equip you for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we need not be afraid. As a matter of fact, what you're going to miss out on by succumbing to fear is much more than what you're going to miss out on if you do it and fail.
Yeah.
I promise.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to fail. It's the best way to learn things.
Yeah.
So just dive right in. Let the Holy Spirit equip you. And when you make those mistakes, when you drop the ball, just go to the drawing board and see how you can extract wisdom from that.
Yeah. And especially in church tech, you drop the ball a lot.
Yeah.
And you miss the cue. You miss a lot of things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's just.
We know you can see those like heads.
Yes, you
Those heads just, that was you. No, it's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's helps you one with yourself.
Mhm.
It's not like, okay, well, at this time I'm going to do that. At that time this is happening. At that time this is happening.
Yeah.
You can't expect everything to go exactly as planned with tech at all, technology at all. You can't.
Yeah.
So that it just allows you to rely on the Lord and
Yeah.
to basically learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just, Pastor Marvin was just talking about this at, Wednesday Night Fire. He was talking about David and Goliath, and so that's kind of ringing in my head. It's like, do we realize that, like, this is the story of David that we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Like, David was not prepared to be a warrior, that he stood up and said, I'll do it, right? And so, like, wasn't, like, he was just the harp player. Like, he was just back there kind of, whatever, making the king feel good. And then he's like, okay, hold on. Like, God's calling me. He's stirring me. I don't have the muscles. I don't have this. I don't have that. I don't have the right armor. I don't, all this kind of stuff. And then he fulfills everything because all we did was say yes. And we stepped out and we took everything that we had, right? He picked up a rock from the ground. Like, he didn't even possess that in the moment. And so, and then all we had to do was say yes and just step out. And he does things above and beyond, even when we feel like we're not equipped.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the moral of the story is, what is the pathway to God's ultimate purpose? Serve Him with whatever's right in front of you. And don't seek self-glory. Seek the glory of God. And God is glorified when we use what He has given us to advance His kingdom. And it could be as big or small as you think, but you definitely don't want to look at it with a worldly point of view. You know this idea of celebrity Christianity and whatever it may be. You can't blame the celebrities for it. You have to blame the culture for it. We're the ones who have bought into this idea that we need to follow celebrities. And so we've let that spill over into the church, and then we make probably very greatly anointed and powerful men or women of God. We try to make them into celebrities, where at the end of the day, they are simply a reflection of a bigger picture. They're a reflection of God's faithfulness to us, even despite us. That even in a generation that's as corrupt as ours, He's still raising up people to preach the word of God. And He is in the midst of pandemic, seizing the opportunity to advance the message of the gospel, unlike any other time we've ever seen. And I'm excited about the future. I believe that we are living in the best of times. And that's something that we need to remind ourselves during a time like this, where everybody's concerned about the future of our nation. Look at how God has proven Himself to be true time and time again throughout church history. And we're going to be just fine. Yep. So with that being said, I enjoyed talking with you today.
So
I hope that those tuning in, you've now learned a little bit more about Cheston and the value that he brings to our team. And so we just want to thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to next week. You'll be hearing from Pastor Lou Penton, who was actually an individual who was involved in the civil rights movements of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And he has a biblically based perspective on civil rights for our generation. So you don't want to miss that. Also next Thursday at 6 p.m. So God bless you, and we'll see you there.
See you.